Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Plotlines. I'm your host, Connor, and we're going to get into another movie review. I'm not really sure how many of you guys really like our movie reviews, but I like doing them, so too bad.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
it's Plotlines, baby. It's time for a movie review. You already know.
I've got Mark from Tradman on with me to discuss the Michael Collins movie. First, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. I know Eric Sammons always says don't ring the bell because you have a life, but no, ring the bell because this is your life.
That's right. That's right. You're the one who tuned in to Plotlines at
You
7:30 p.m. So
This isn't 7:30 p.m.
isn't it?
This isn't live, Mark.
We're not live.
No.
I was wondering why nobody was commenting. I was like, come on, people. All right, fair enough. Fair enough.
Well, Mark, welcome back to the show.
It's great to be back.
We talked last time about what was it? No Country for what was it?
No Country for Old Men. Yep.
No Country for Old Men. That was your pick. This one's my pick.
Great pick.
Thank
This
you.
is a
Well,
great pick.
Tell us first. Just give us an introduction to the movie.
Okay, Michael Collins was a film that came out. Gosh, when did that film came out? 2000, or maybe it was 99.
95, I think.
95. Oh wow. Okay, so the Troubles were still going on when this movie came out.
Oh yeah, I didn't even. Oh no, sorry, 96. But
yeah, they're still they're wrapping up the Troubles as this movie comes out. So that's interesting. The movie is a biopic of the famous Irish Republican Army commander Michael Collins, and it takes place. The movie starts during the 1916 Easter Rising and takes us through his life during the Irish War for Independence, and then sort of concludes in the middle of the Irish Civil War. I think to understand the film, it's important to take a quick snapshot of the political situation in Ireland at the turn of the 20th century. There is a significant move for independence, but the British government has got other fish to fry right now. They are involved in World War I, and they lost a lot of people in World War I. So that's happening.
It's still World War One, isn't it? During
yes,
the beginning.
Yeah, 1916. The World War I is still happening. The Brits have had to reposition some of their army to Dublin to quell an uprising that takes place in Easter of 1916. This will become sort of the Boston Tea Party of Ireland, right? I know that sounds like a weird thing to say, but this 1916 Easter Rising will become, in the minds of Irish independence people, sometimes they're called Republicans and sometimes they're called nationalists, this will become the seminal watershed event that they consider themselves a continuation of.
They're also socialists, aren't they?
That's the other thing that's changing in the Irish independence movement is, it's 1916, so revolution is in the air, right? I think when Easter of 1916 happens, they've already had the monarchy in Russia has not been overthrown, but they're about to be overthrown pretty quickly.
It's either it's around that time or it's going to be happening. Is maybe 17 might be when it happens.
I know there were 2 revolutions in 17. The last one was the Bolshevik, and then the first one before that's where they overthrew the monarchy. So I'm not, but you get my point. Revolution's in the air. There's a revolution in Mexico that is pretty violent. We talked about that on our show at this time. And the Irish independence movement will become fascinated by socialism, and to its detriment, in my opinion. But yeah, it will become fascinated by socialism, not quite the Soviet style, but still not very, they're not embracing their Catholicism. They're not rallying around that.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a little bit more hostile to religion than previous manifestations of this movement.
Well, isn't it interesting that they're basically national socialists?
Well,
I'm serious.
Yeah, it is interesting.
It's absolutely insane that because we think of a certain German political party as their I guess probably German form of it, but the political party was National Socialist, and the political theory or the philosophy of the IRA was the same.
Well, not quite. Now, I will say this:
Well, in
the
some
Sinn
ways.
Féin, the Sinn Féiners and the IRA people are very much Marxist-Leninists. They will openly admit that they are a Marxist-Leninist party. So I would say, in that sense, they would ally themselves with international socialism. Although
So
you
then they're
are,
communists.
oh yeah, for sure. I mean,
Okay.
I mean,
It's
apparently
not looking good for them.
apparently one famine in Ireland was not bad enough. I guess we need another one for some reason. I don't quite understand why a people who went through what they went through in 1847 would advocate Marxist Leninism. I just
Yeah, it's crazy
but
what they
anyway,
go through to get, and then but I mean, this is kind of off topic, but just what they are now, they're just a whole nother type of materialism.
yeah.
Just as almost it was bad in certain ways, but not I would say even less respectable now.
Yeah, no, I would absolutely agree with that. I am not pro IRA or any manifestation of that type of institution. You cannot be pro life and pro car bomb at the same time. I don't care what anybody says. The things that the Irish Republican Army engaged in throughout the Troubles, and I can't speak about what they did in 1916 or things like that. There might be people who could make just war arguments that are beyond what I'm capable of doing, who might say that's morally justifiable. But what the IRA was engaged in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, and on through the 90s, there's just no moral defense for some of those things. And now Sinn Féin is a pro-abortion political party.
Yeah.
They draw all of their support from the Catholic population, and they're pro-abortion.
Well, I'm pretty sure all their political parties in Ireland now are pro-abortion.
Not the Unionists. The Democratic Unionist Party in Northern Ireland, they're run by radical.
That's Northern Ireland.
That's true. That's when I talk about Sinn Féin, I am talking about Northern Ireland. I don't think Sinn Féin has much of a presence in the Republic.
I'm pretty sure it's still a political party.
It's just a political party, but I don't know how big into the doll that they are, like how many seats they have or anything like that. I've often theorized that the only thing that keeps Sinn Féin in power is the partition.
Probably, yeah. I mean, any political party that's a nationalist party, what keeps them in power except for whatever allows them to argue that they're not in control.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And
yeah.
I know I got off topic there, and I apologize, but that's just a
okay.
basic little background of the war. Now, I like this film for a lot of reasons. One of which is they do show you a side of Ireland that I don't think the movies, at least here in the United States, ever pay enough attention to, and that is the Protestant Irish. There is a character in the film who is a member of the Royal Irish Constabulary. He is there to sort of spy on Michael Collins, but he eventually gets won over to Michael Collins's cause. But I think it's important to talk about why is he anti-Michael Collins in the first place? I mean, he's Irish. He lives in this country.
Is that
Bry?
Bry?
Yes.
He seems to jump over pretty quickly, though.
Right. Yeah. And who knows how long that conversion process took place in real life or not. But the point is that there's a whole subpopulation of people in Ireland who are not Catholic, want nothing to do with Roman Catholicism. In fact, their view of Roman Catholicism is that they view the Catholic Church as an international criminal conspiracy. They are probably the most vehemently and militantly anti-Catholic people you will ever meet in your life.
You mean it's not?
Yeah, right. No, these people are walking Schick tracts. I mean,
what?
They have a belief about Roman Catholicism, which is just
what tracts?
Schick, Jack Schick. Have you ever heard of a Schick tract?
No.
So these are ridiculous little cartoons printed by some, I don't even know if he was a real guy or not, named Jack Schick. And they would do things like, accuse Catholic nuns of witchcraft. I mean, bizarre, off the wall calumnies against the church, which, are not serious intellectual attacks on the church. They just appeal to the lowest common denominator. But yeah, so the Protestants of Ireland very much have that sentiment. They view Catholicism as inextricably linked with Irish ethnicity, which they do not consider themselves ethnically Irish. They consider themselves what are called Ulster Scots, or sometimes called Scots Irish.
What
But
about the
really,
Anglo-Irish?
they call themselves British is more than anything else. I mean, if you go down to the Shankill Road in Northern Ireland, that's the heart of the empire down there. And don't wear your scapular down there. Don't wear rosary beads. None of that. That stuff will not fly in that neighborhood at all.
At least they're against abortion at this point.
At least they're against abortion at this point. I got to tell you, it's a sad day when you have more in common with those folks than you do with your own co-religionists. But such is life, such is the tribulations that we find ourselves in. But anyway, Michael Collins. So Michael Collins himself is portrayed as a man who sees violence. Tell me if you agree with this. He's not a violent man, but he sees it as a necessary means to an end. And so he's been sort of pushed into this. Do you think, did you see that as the way the film tried to portray him?
Yes, and that he's good at it. So it's kind of like somebody who maybe, at least the way they want you to think of him, is somebody who would like things to be better off, but the only thing that he knows how to do is violence. So therefore, he knows no other way to assist.
Yeah. I would agree with. Well, I don't know that I agree with his assessment, but I agree with your assessment of that character. Yeah, I think that's probably true. Now he initially participates in the Easter Rising, and he's arrested. But he one of the biggest mistakes the British ever made is in not killing Michael Collins, because most of the other ringleaders or Eamon de Valera. Well,
Yeah.
I think Eamon de Valera was a little less potent than maybe he imagines himself to be, or he imagined himself to be. I think, Michael Collins really sort of won that war for independence for them, not Eamon de Valera. But, it's interesting because James Connolly, when he was one of the original organizers of the 16 Rebellion, the British killed him. They killed Patrick Pearse. They killed Emmett McDonough. I think they killed Carl Brew. I'm not sure. But anyway, they killed most of the ringleaders, but they left Michael Collins alive. And they imprisoned Eamon de Valera, which of course they break him out of prison. That was never going to keep. And he begins this clandestine guerrilla war against the British Army, where, his mentality is sort of the one thing we have going for us are they're in our country. So these are our people. This is our land. We know it backwards and forwards. They're foreigners here. So what we need to do is make it really, really uncomfortable for them to stay here.
Yeah. Before we go further, do you want to watch the trailer?
Let's do it.
Okay. Awesome. Hold on. I need to actually. Okay. Okay, so yeah, that was the trailer. Though it's interesting because it's a in the 90s, it's so different from what we're used to nowadays.
Yeah, it is. And I was actually just sitting here thinking how much Liam Neeson looked like Michael Collins in that movie, man. I mean, he really killed it. He
Yeah, no,
absolutely killed it.
it
Um,
he did a great job. Seriously, though the acting in this movie is superb. In my
oh
opinion.
yeah, and it's a star-studded cast. Aidan Quinn, of course. I just said his
Julia
name.
Roberts,
Julia Roberts, Liam Neeson.
Alan Rickman.
Oh, that's right. Alan Rickman's in. Oh my goodness, I forgot.
Yeah,
Oh, he plays Eamon de Valera.
yeah, exactly. And he
Right.
does an amazing accent as well, and it's just
And that's what
I
was so great about this film, because I rewatched it recently in preparation for this episode we were doing, and I forgot I was looking at Alan Rickman. That's how good the acting in the movie is. I mean, you'll be sitting there thinking, where do I know that guy from? And you'll go, oh wow, that's So yeah, it was
I did
very
watch
well
this
cast.
movie actually in high school.
Mhm.
And I never put two and two together during when we were watching the movie.
That it was Liam
Um,
Neeson, or
that it was Alan Rickman.
yeah,
I
yeah,
I definitely knew it was Liam Neeson, but I did not know it was Alan Rickman. So
yeah,
watching it again was like, oh my, that's Alan Rickman.
yeah, and he crushed it. And it's hard to do period pieces like this, because it's not just it's a period piece, but it's also a war movie. So you have to get all of these props and all of this scenery, and then you got to blow it up. You got to blow it up, and when you blow something up, you get one take. So period pieces like this that are set. Now you could do period pieces in like World War One, because really all you need is a field. All you really got to have is costuming at that point, and you just
Yeah,
need a
World War One, at least on the Western Front, is really boring.
yeah, yeah.
So it doesn't make it. I don't think it makes for for a great like action movie.
Yeah, but in a situation like this, you've got to recreate Dublin in 1916. So that's not just uniforms, it's cars, it's all kinds of props and scenery. And then you got to recreate it's Dublin in 1916. So you got to blow it all up. It was incredibly, the scenery, the casting, the direction. I mean, it was a really good movie. And it reminded me of how well they used to do movies.
Well, okay, but here's the problem. How much do you think it grossed?
I don't know. Probably not tons. Maybe, I don't know. Did it do well at the box office?
It only made 3 million more than the budget.
Hmm. Yeah.
So it was not worth it. And that's usually
Yeah.
not even that they usually don't take into account advertising
Yeah.
in the budget. So it probably made less. It probably lost money.
The thing is I get the feeling that if it came out in '96, then that came out for a reason. People were talking a lot about that because the Troubles are wrapping up. They're like historic peace talks are happening. Two people who had sworn blood feuds with each other, sitting down at table talking to one another. It's big news. And I remember I was in high school around the time of this. I was a senior, so this was big news for us, for the Irish diaspora everywhere in the world. This was a huge deal. And I think people like very simplified versions of history. They like to just think that the Irish Catholics and the Irish Protestants don't get along, and that's all I need to know about Ireland. The Jews and the Palestinians, they don't get along. That's all I need to know about Israel. That's all I need. When in actuality, the origin stories of these conflicts are very complicated and incredibly nuanced, and not as clear cut and black and white, I think, as we like our history. Do you think there's something to that?
Well, first of all, I like my history confusing.
I do
But
too.
that's just me. But usually it's funny. The things that they try and make black and white are usually not the things that not the parts of history that are black and white. Like there
Yeah.
are parts of history that are straight up black and white, kind of like the French Revolution is pretty black and white, Masons and that sort of thing, versus the church is very black and white. But history, or the way we tell history often tries to make the like you know, like the whole the victors. Somehow the victors are always the
Yeah.
like somehow always the people who win are the you know, throughout history are the good guys when that's not, you know, not usually accurate. But I do agree that people like it to be simple. Um,
So, can I
I
tell you a story about an Irish Protestant couple that I met once? See, growing up, I don't know, Connor, if you had this experience growing up Irish Catholic, but like I was terrified of those people. I had been told that like Irish Protestants will just as soon kill you as look at you. They'll kill you on sight, and they're all like basically skinheads who are all Protestant paramilitaries, and they kill Catholics for fun, and their bloodlust knows no end. um, and then I met one, and he was a lovely, lovely individual. He was not violent, blood. He didn't want to kill me. He didn't. He didn't know anything. None of that was true. And then we got into a conversation about the Troubles, and I heard his version of Irish history. Now, I got to tell you, I'm still who I am, and I still support a united Ireland, and I believe the Irish people should have the right to self-determination. But I got to tell you, Connor, if I had been born into his community, I would feel exactly the same way he does, and I would have exactly the same opinions that he does. So it made me sort of say, you know, before you go around talking about who the enemy is and who, you know, and you don't know everything, and you don't always know. I mean, history's complicated. And the truth about both the Irish and the Ulster Scots is they have a history of being screwed over royally by England. And
True. Yeah. True. So I have a very different sort of upbringing in that manner. I don't even know how much I recognized whether or not like that Irish Protestants existed, if that makes sense.
yeah.
Like I don't think I had a full understanding that there was this big divide. Obviously, you know, being an Irish Catholic, it was just St. Patrick's Day and that sort of thing. And uh, being a suburb kid, there's not really much of that like
It's not like
animosity.
Beverly.
I don't know what's Beverly.
Beverly is an Irish neighborhood in the south side of Chicago. St.
Okay,
Patrick's
yeah.
Day, at least it used to be a huge deal out in Beverly. But
So it's just not like it was more just a family affair, kind of, you know, just a intimate family gathering once a year, where we were proud to be Irish.
yeah.
And we didn't really discuss any of the politics or any of the relationships with Protestants. So for me, I don't really have as much of a um, I guess I don't have as much of a desire for or bias towards Irish independence.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I think what I would rather what would be best for the morality or the Catholicity of Ireland, and think nationalism for Ireland has been a bigger problem for the Catholic faith
Yeah.
than it has been for getting rid of the British.
Well, and it's so weird because for so long in Ireland's history, the independence movement was centered around our Catholicism because that's why they hated us so much. It was the one thing that they just could not stand about us. So we're like, oh yeah, you don't like that about us? We're not only going to be Catholic, we're going to make the Pope look like a Protestant. And we're going to, I mean, and that's what we did. And then in the 19 in at the turn of the 20th century, the Irish independence movement became fascinated by socialism, and we have not gotten out of that rut. And consequently, that's why they fail.
Yeah.
That's why the independence movement constantly fails, and it constantly will, because we are not rallying around the one and only thing that the one and only person who can defeat all tyrants and has defeated all tyrants, Jesus Christ.
Well, here's the thing.
Everybody else is, we're just an idiot compared to him at this. I mean, we don't know how to transform cultures and transform hearts and transform minds. Christ does that. And then we take the credit, But anyway.
Well, I mean, think about it this way: the British gave. I mean, we'll discuss this more, focusing more on the movie in a second. But the British kind of gave up when they stopped caring about our religion as much. When they stopped caring about Ireland's religion, because when they stopped caring about their own religion, then they stopped hating the Irish for being Catholic. They just started I mean, if they did hate the Irish, they just hated the Irish for being Irish, which is different than hating the Irish for being Catholic, because that's not what the original reason for the struggle was. The struggle wasn't about nationalism. The struggle was about religion, leading up to the probably the maybe 18, leading up to the turn of the 20th century. Before that, it was strictly religion, because people didn't really care that much about like ethnicity. Like it wasn't like it was specifically, we need to dislodge the Catholic faith from Ireland, because until they're away from popery, then they will not have anything in common with us. And so it's not really about ethnicity. That's the thing, is when they made it about nationalism, that's when they lost the plot.
I agree. Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, now I do think, we live in a world of nation states. And so to some extent, anybody who is a patriot is going to be a nationalist to some extent. But there's a real danger. Well, of course, the problem with all socialist movements, whether we're talking about national socialism or international socialism, is it elevates the state to a god. The first tenet, whether you're talking about Marxist-Leninism or Adolf Hitlerism, is the state is your new god. Well, that's all right there. And I don't care whether you're far right or far left. The minute you see that, man, you got to book the other direction and run from that crap, because that the only outcome to that is corpses by the millions. At least that's what history has shown us.
Yeah. Well, let's bring the focus back. We're gonna focus back on the movie.
Yes.
So let's talk about first the Irish cabinet, the cabinet that's been meeting in secret post the Easter Rising, which I do think that all the Irish stuff, like all this conversation, is really well timed with Easter coming up and Good Friday coming up, because the peace accords in the 90s it was wasn't it Good Friday?
It was the Good Friday Agreement. Yep.
And it started with the Easter Rising. So
the saying used to go, on Sunday Jesus rises, on Monday it was the Irish. That was the saying.
Oh, that's terrible.
It is. But that's the degree to which, at least now my family hasn't been in Ireland for I don't even know how many generations, but nonetheless, the Easter Rising, the General Post Office in Dublin has this like religious significance almost, as this is, and the funny thing is, like, the rest of the world could have cared less. It wasn't some earth-shattering global
no one
event.
cares about the Irish.
No one cared but the Irish.
No one's ever cared about the Irish.
But the Provisional Government, you were talking about the Provisional Government is meeting in secret.
Yeah, but the point is nobody cares about the Irish. They live on an island, off the coast of off the coast of Britain, and so they're too far away from France and the mainland, and way too far from America. So in some ways, no one cared.
And so why does everyone care? Because I'll tell you why. The reason is because the Irish don't live on that little island anymore.
After
1847, they live everywhere. Almost. There are more Irish people around the rest of the Irish diaspora is bigger than the Irish homelanders.
Yeah. And what is it? The geese, the Irish geese, is that what they're called?
I've not heard this.
There's something about Charles Colomb would know better, but there's these tales of the Irish going out and fighting in different armies for over the course of probably like 300 years.
Oh, I'm sure that happened. Yeah.
But they were called, I think, the Irish geese or something like that, because I think it's because they flew from Ireland to to join different armies. I could be wrong about the title, but
there was an Irish regiment that fought in the Mexican Revolution, the San Patricios.
Yeah, see, they're everywhere.
Yeah, we're everywhere. But yeah, so anyway, the provisional government is meeting in secret. Yeah, that's actually a really good scene, because he goes through why don't exceed the minister's brief. Don't do that.
Also, I love that he's the minister for, I think, intelligence.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's just basically the minister for mayhem, really.
And jailbreaks.
But with so we got Eamon de Valera, who in the end actually creates his own, not after the movie, but like in history, eventually creates his own political party. He breaks away from Sinn Féin.
Fianna Fáil, I think.
Fianna
Fáil.
So, and it's just interesting. So Michael Collins and Eamon de Valera are supposed to represent these two different sort of strategies of reaching independence. But to me, really, de Valera seems like he's just allowing Collins to do what he needs him to do so that he can sort of throw him under the bus. And I mean, that's kind of what he does.
This is an ugly, ugly history. This history between Michael Collins and Eamon de Valera, and it tore a country apart. They fought a civil war over these sides. And my family tended to come from we didn't like Eamon de Valera camp. We used to sing a song called "Down from the Mast," and it was, "Take it down from the mast, Irish traitors. It's the flag we Republicans claim. It will never belong to free staters, for you brought Ireland nothing but shame." So the thing about free staters, the people who signed that treaty to create Northern Ireland, then create the Irish Free State, they were free staters and they weren't real Irish Republicans, Well, so it's just an ugly history. And I don't know how much of it in this film, like you could probably do a whole other film from Eamon's point of view and it would come out a little differently, but that's my point.
Well, doesn't Michael Collins, isn't he the one that in the movie that negotiates the treaty?
Yes.
So, and then he backs away and leads a counter sort of revolution against it.
No, Collins was a free stater. He creates the Irish Free State, and he goes to this peace talks, but he's got in mind the fact that all these Irish Protestants that I'm talking about, they all live up in the north east corner of the island for the most part. That's really their home base of operations. That's where their culture is headquartered, and where that's really their sort of homeland. He's like, those people aren't ever going to be Irish. If I demand, if the Brits hand me the whole island, I'm going to be fighting a war with these people for 50 freaking years, because these people will never, they will cease to be British over their dead body. This is the challenge that you come to with is that you really do realize, the Irish flag is very, it tells the story. The green represents the Catholic population. The orange represents the Protestant population, and the white is peace between the two.
I have a big problem with that flag.
Why?
Well, I don't think the green actually represents Catholicism.
Okay.
I think it represents nationalism.
Yes. Well, and yes, I should say the green represents the Catholics.
Because blue represented the Catholics before the green became popularized. And I did a whole video about St. Patrick's Day and St. Patrick wearing blue, not represented by green.
Well, yeah, but
but that was the whole thing, is like the flags of Ireland used to be blue.
Yeah,
before
we're never going to make blue our color ever, because the blue noses are what we call Protestants, and
It
they
doesn't
cheer.
make any sense though.
They cheer for a team called Glasgow Rangers, and their jerseys are blue.
Okay,
And
but
they
orange is Protestant. Orange is for William of
oranges.
Orange.
It is, yeah. But blue is also a very big color. Then the primary color of the British flag is blue. That's blue. Blue will never represent in Ireland. Blue will never represent Catholicism. If it once did, it never will again.
Blue represents Scotland in the British flag, anyways. It doesn't even represent the English. Red does.
And Scotland is where a big chunk of all of these Presbyterians came from.
I'm not saying that.
I'm not fighting with you. I'm just
but the blue cross is St. Andrew's cross. The red one is St. George's. You can't argue with with those.
No, I'm not the one making the argument. I'm just telling you that will never be their color, and it's never going to happen. I don't
think. I think it would take, just as it will take a drastic change to re-Catholicize Ireland itself and the Irish people.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be just as drastic of a change needed to revive a non-nationalistic kind of Irish culture.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because there isn't one. I mean, right now.
Exactly. So I'm just saying. I'm saying it's not. It's the same battle. It's the same battle to re-Catholicize Ireland, as well as to bring back symbols that don't represent the sort of the Irish Republic, but instead represents Ireland as a whole and the history of it.
I've got the secret to re-Catholicize Ireland. Nobody wants to hear it, but I know what it is.
I'm afraid of what it is. No, I'm kidding. I have a feeling I know what it is.
The usus antiquior of the traditional Latin Mass. The Irish gave up on Catholicism when the hierarchy did. Sorry, guys. I don't know what else to tell you. The first rule of plumbing is the crap flows downhill. Hello. I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, you can't expect these people to grasp onto Catholicism when 97% of the hierarchy doesn't even believe in that religion. You're going to go out and ask all these people to go out and believe in a religion. I say don't ask people to do something you're not willing to do.
Now I wish we had DeCrevy on to talk about this.
My former LC brother.
LC?
Wasn't he in the Legion?
Oh yeah, he was. Wait, so you were a part of the Legionnaires? I don't think
I was a novice for 2 years. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's all different. That's going to be probably a different podcast.
Oh man, I've talked a little bit about this either with Rob or Anthony on one of the episodes of Avoiding Babylon, but I'm happy to tell the stories. I mean, it was in the 90s, so it was before all the stuff. We knew there were rumors, but that's all we thought they were rumors about the.
Well, we can't talk about it now, otherwise we'll get too far off. But all I'll say is, who cares if you talked about it, Avoiding Babylon?
Yeah, right. Who? I'm not playing the name game up in here.
Yeah, I mean, last time Anthony name dropped me, he just said my friend Connor. He didn't even mention Plotlines, which is exactly what he complained about with Kennedy on Taylor Marshall. He was like, Kennedy only said that my friend Anthony and didn't mention the YouTube channel. And I'm like, you just did the same thing.
You haven't mentioned Tradman once tonight. I'm just saying.
What?
You haven't mentioned my show, man.
I said Mark from Tradman.
Did you? Oh, okay. I thought you just said Mark. I'm sorry.
Everyone needs to go subscribe to Tradman.
Yeah.
Right now. Because Mark's complaining.
That's right. I don't want to have to. I'm getting triggered over here.
Okay. So back to Eamon de Valera, Michael Collins. We also have Harry. Was it Boland or Boland?
Yeah, I'm not sure what his name.
Boyland.
Boylan, I think it was his last name. Yeah.
Okay. He is the Michael Collins' right-hand man. And interesting enough, when Eamon de Valera, first Eamon de Valera is in prison, and you mentioned the what's the Latin antiquus?
Usus antiquior, yeah.
Usus antiquior. We see him serving a Latin mass.
Yeah, you do see
in
that
the movie, but he's doing it just to steal a key.
Right. Right.
So I have such mixed feelings about that about that
Oh,
scene.
oh yeah. No, there's I will tell you this. For a group of people who are always associated with Catholicism, we are the worst Catholics in the world.
Oh, the worst part about this movie is how many times they use our Lord's name in vain.
Wow, yeah, you're right. I guess
It,
I've just become so numb to that, you know. That's horrible, but
it might be the worst. Like, okay, it's probably not the worst movie using that, but I don't watch a lot of movies that usually involve that. So
sure.
it's one of the worst movies that I've seen where they're constantly either using God or Jesus Christ. They're using our Lord's name in vain so often.
Well, they completely lost their faith. The
Well,
Irish have completely lost their faith.
but even
And
in
yeah,
1918,
it
so like,
happened, Connor. I'm telling you, they caught the socialism bug, and they have not stopped sniffing at that wound for almost 100 friggin' years. And as soon as they do, we can all get on with our lives. But I mean, yeah, as soon as that happened, they lost the faith like that.
yeah. Also, so Harry and Michael Collins have this kind of an odd relationship with this Michael Collins' future fiance.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit weird because Harry's kind of going out with her, but Michael's always flirting with her as well.
They're not even good friends, the Irish.
Yeah, exactly. And at the end of the day, you're not really sure what broke the friendship apart. Either was it the politics or was it the relationship?
Yeah. Well, yeah. It could have
And
been both. I mean,
yeah, and it probably, at least it is from the perspective of the movie.
yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know what it is in reality.
Well, I don't know I know nothing about Michael Collins's personal life other than he became engaged to Kitty Kiernan.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that they ever got married because I think
No,
I think
he was
he
assassinated
was killed
beforehand.
before that. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't even think he had. Wait, hold on a second. This is a. Oh yeah, okay. Well, he had his funeral at the Catholic Cathedral in Dublin.
Yeah, well, I'm not surprised because at the end of the day, he was supported by all by the British. So at the end, he has the support of the powers that be. So in a way, he died a better Catholic in some ways, at least.
Well, I have this. I have this. While in London, his practice of lighting votive candles for Kitty developed a habit of attending Mass daily, usually at the Brompton Oratory.
Oh, Brompton
In
Oratory.
letters between the two, he credits Kiernan as having given him a newfound appreciation of confession and Holy Communion. Collins attended Mass regularly throughout the ensuing Civil War. So, another complicated figure, right?
And it's the Civil War between the Irish and the Irish, not
Right.
not between the British and the Irish.
Right.
So which is the most interesting, I think, because it seems like the movie paints the conflict between De Valera and Collins as Collins being more just and being because it seems like even though they both want the same thing, De Valera seems like he's just blowing the situation out of proportion because he knows that he can get support.
Yeah, it would have to be for that. I often wonder, and I would love to ask them and De Valera. Let's say they hand you the whole friggin' island. What are you going to do with County Down and County Armagh and County Antrim when they decide they ain't going to be governed by your Catholic behind? Then what are you going to do?
Or
I mean, you're going to be fighting a war with these people for forever.
Is there going to be a free state?
Is there going to be a free state? Yeah, exactly. What happens when they secede from you? I mean,
That'd be funny though.
Oh my! I can guarantee you that's what would have happened.
It's a free exchange.
Because check this out. These Ulstermen, the 36th Ulster Division lost more people at the Battle of the Somme than any other British unit at the Somme.
Yeah.
Then
Have
they
you ever-
came they came back from that war and were told, yeah, the island that you guys used to run as your whole country, you now live in the top northeastern third of the island because we gave everything else away to the Catholics, and this is now what's yours. And you know what they did when that happened? They said, okay, fair enough, but across this line and no further. Now, I got to tell you, if I had been born into their community, I would probably feel like that. So I look at them a lot differently than I used to, and I can see that whoever ends up ruling Ireland, you're going to have to make room for those people. You're not just going to, well, this is all ruled from Dublin now, and the Protestants don't matter, because them people will make trouble for you. Don't get it twisted. They're Irish too. And they,
Yeah.
we when we don't feel included, we let you know.
Yeah. So, well, we can talk about Broy more because you're talking about the so he's a spy, a double agent for Michael Collins. He first starts off as an enemy. Okay, and interesting enough, so remember what happens to him at the end of the movie?
I do.
He dies. Okay.
Yep.
But in real life, he died in 1973.
Okay, yeah. So I knew there were some historical liberties taken. Yeah, I thought that he was one of them, but I wasn't sure.
No, I just thought it was funny. I was like, wait, that was like a big part of the movie was his like his death and his like tortured. He got tortured by by Charles Dance. Also, Charles Dance is in this movie. I forgot.
Yes,
and he's so good.
Oh, he crushed it.
It was funny. I remember an interview with Charles Dance. It was hilarious. Where they were talking about what the interviewer was talking about how like posh people are often villains in movies, and he was like, "I'm not posh. Like what are you talking about? Like you like I just thought it was funny that this lady didn't know what a posh accent actually was, because Charles Dance isn't even that. So I just thought the way he approached that was like, what are you talking? Like, I'm not.
I would have considered him posh. No,
I think he's more theatrical, not posh.
Okay,
like,
so
you know what I mean?
So
like,
posh doesn't mean necessarily just upper crust. Posh is a certain like.
I think there's two elements of it. So I think there's a standard sort of nowadays what we think of as British accent that we would consider posh only because it seems highbrow for us.
Gotcha.
But I don't think that's actually posh. So do you know who Jacob Rees-Mogg is?
I do not.
Okay, but he's look him up sometime. He's a Catholic English politician.
Okay.
Anyways, he has a very posh accent. And it's not the same, I don't think, as Charles Dance. But but for us, it might seem more similar just because we're not used to the difference. And neither was this interviewer. This interviewer, even though she was actually British, wasn't.
Well, there's no such thing as a British accent. I mean, there are several British accents.
She was English, and she didn't know what a posh accent was compared to something else. I just thought that was amusing and embarrassing on TV.
Interestingly enough, there is an Irish accent that you will only hear amongst this Protestant community that we're talking about in Ireland. It's an Ulster Scot accent. It is a distinct, unique Irish accent you will only find in that community. So when I hear it, that's why I used to tell Anthony, I was telling Anthony one time, he said, can you pick out where people are from in Ireland from the accents? And I was like, I'm not really that good at it. I can tell you if somebody's from Northern Ireland or if they're from the Republic by the way they talk. And if they're from Northern Ireland, I can tell you if they're Catholic or Protestant by listening to them talk.
Wait. Do you have any? Can you do any accents?
No, not enough to really like do it justice. I mean, I can do a little bit some Irish accent, but like
because like if you could do like the Northern Ireland Catholic one or the Northern Ireland Protestant one. That would just be really interesting.
Well, in Northern Ireland, in Northern Ireland, there's a lot of Scottish influence in the language, you see, and so there's always a bit of an upward inflection. So when they'll talk about it, they talk a little bit like this, and so there's a little bit of that. And whereas if you go more to the south in Ireland, you get more hard T's on the D's, and so it's 4:30 in the afternoon. You see.
Well, what about the Catholic one? The Catholic one in Northern Ireland.
So this would be my impression of a Catholic accent from Northern Ireland, and this is sort of the way that they would talk. Now, if you're from a different community and you're from Northern Ireland, you can recognize this accent very clearly. Right?
Yeah,
so
that's
like that
Scottish.
Ulster Scot. That's that Ulster Scot accent. You only hear it, and so that's just a unique thing about Ireland. You know, they have a whole community there in that little northeast corner of the country, and that's the only place you'll find those people. They don't have a huge diaspora like the Irish Catholics do, and so their theory is the Irish Catholics can find a cultural home literally anywhere in the world. All we got is this little chunk of earth, and they're going to defend it to the death. You watch, I guarantee you.
Yeah, I apologize to all my my Irish brethren for in advance
making your ears bleed.
Well, for anything that we've gotten wrong. Please feel free to correct us in the comments, especially correct Mark's accents if he's
absolutely, because it's horrible.
But if he got them right, just if he got them right, please let us know if you think Mark did a good job.
They won't. They will let you know, but not that.
but either way, like the video.
Yes, please do.
Because first of all, I don't know how many people are talking about Irish politics or movies about people. So I think if you're Irish, and even if you disagree with what we're saying, just having the conversation, I think, is a good step forward. Maybe. What do you think?
Definitely. And one of the things that I was very surprised. Are you still with me? Am I still coming in?
Yep.
One of the things that surprised me a lot about this fellow that I met who was from Northern Ireland was how different he was than what I expected. I sort of was under the mentality that all they thought about was, me and my religion all day. And, for most of Northern Ireland is not the Troubles. In fact, very few of it is. They got some neighborhoods in Northern Ireland where they're all about it. They're going to rep the cause, and they're going to rep it harder than anybody else. But for the most part, people want to just forget about that. They don't like to talk about it. They don't like to, especially with people who aren't from there, who don't understand. And so you'll hear a lot of times people will just reference the bad old days, and that's all they'll, they don't want to get in too deep into it. So I try to have some sensitivity to that when I talk with people who are from there, and just, I love my Protestant brothers and sisters. I love them, and I want them to convert, obviously, and be a part of the one true church. But I still love them, and I don't want bad things to happen to them. And I think, I think there's got to be, once we get to this point where, Irish people have this thing where they don't just know history. They carry it around with them like a albatross, I mean, and I hope we're at this point in our history where Irish Catholics and Irish Protestants can say, look, I don't like you and you don't like me. Fair enough. But maybe we could just be able to go to the grocery store without having to carry around 800 years of Irish history and have that beef with us everywhere we go. What do you say? And that's what the Good Friday Agreement basically was.
Yeah.
So
no, though my goal would be, let's move a little forward. I mean, at the end of the day, all these problems boil down to we don't have Christian unity.
Bingo.
And we need that to be truly united.
May they all be one.
Indeed.
As our Lord said.
And the problem
Yeah.
for Protestants is you can't have oneness in Protestantism.
That's very true. Or in the Orthodox either. I mean, look
Well,
at all the
yeah,
schisms that they've gone. And, people think there's bad blood between the Catholics and the Protestants. Man, the Catholics and the Orthodox, that's a beef right there.
you should see the bad blood between the Catholics and the Catholics.
Oh yeah, no, trust me, we're our own worst enemy. There's no question. Oftentimes
Yeah.
my prayer is, Lord, please protect the Catholic Church from the Catholic Church so that we can save the Catholic Church from the Catholic Church.
See, yep.
Very interesting time to be alive.
Well, yeah. If there's anything we all lack is unity, but the thing is that Catholics can unify under the church, even if there's a lot of division within it, at least visually.
Mhm.
But Protestants can't unite with each other. So because there's so much division theologically, and because even so many Protestant churches these days have just basically given up on theology and have moved on to social issues, for some of them, for good, because abortion, and some of them are anti-abortion, anti-gay marriage, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then the reverse is that now they're basically pro-gay. Other ones are pro-gay marriage and pro-abortion. So it's just very much not a like, to have like devout Protestants. There are probably a lot of them, but they're not represented by their churches.
Yeah. Wow.
And
A lot of that, lot of that going around nowadays.
yeah. But anyway, so this is important because this is all the context that's kind of going into these battles. And even though religion isn't talked about that much in the movie.
Yeah, and I was one of the things I was actually reading is that Kitty is the one who got him going back to Mass.
Yeah, you said that. That's pretty interesting.
And he made a general confession before he left to London to negotiate the Anglo-Irish Treaty. My guess is he's figuring, just in case I'm assassinated when I get over there. But while he
realized it was going to be his own people.
Yeah, that's it. And if you're Irish, it probably will be your own people that'll end up taking you out. But it was while
these days, if it's anybody, it's always kind of your own people. You can't get taken out. I mean, I guess you can get killed. I'm not talking about necessarily getting killed or whatever.
Yeah,
I'm talking about just sort of
betrayed
in a way, in a world of cancel culture and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
The only way you get taken out is if your people leave you behind and betray you.
I've never really meditated that much on what it must have felt like for our Lord to sit there and eat dinner with Judas that night. I mean, to just sit there and eat dinner with him and knowing the whole time you're a snake. And I got to tell you, when Traditionis Custodes came out, I started to really think, what's it like to sit there and eat with somebody who stabs you in the back? Wow. That hurts.
I mean, and you don't do anything but just weep.
It hurts in a way that nothing else does. And I think it was so important for our Lord to choose to go through that hurt, because remember, our Lord chose to suffer, and not just the physical suffers, but the emotional, the mental, the spiritual anguish. He chose to do it all, and at its most extreme. And I just think there's nothing worse than a betrayal by somebody who's supposedly supposed to be on your side. And you just think, man, ouch.
Well, Dave Valera is really set up as a Judas figure in this movie.
Yeah.
Like even they have a kind of a garden moment.
They do.
Yeah.
Great catch, Connor. Great catch.
But
it was a garden moment, wasn't there?
it's a little different, obviously. So they get back and they've signed the treaty, and it's a free state now, and now civil war is broken out between De Valera's camp, which is against the treaty and wants a republic, and Michael Collins' side, who is more well organized and more of a military, well ordered military with the backing of the British. Also, I think it's so interesting. Churchill is mentioned in this movie, but it's not. But I mean, it's obviously Winston Churchill, but it's not the Winston Churchill we all think of.
My grandmother, to the day I took my grandmother once to a pub here in Houston, and she would not sit in the booth because she would not sit under Winston Churchill's portrait. And I remember I was like, what's the deal with Winston Churchill? She was like, he's a great Englishman, but God, did he hate the Irish. And I thought, oh, okay, interesting. Didn't know that. I wonder what your take on that is, Connor.
Well, he's not in this movie, in this time period. He's not a great Englishman either. See, that's the thing. He's a liberal at this point. Okay. So he becomes eventually in World War II, he becomes the conservative or the Tory prime minister. And his reflections on history are really good.
Yeah.
Especially about World War I. And he is very important. He basically comes to believe that it would have been that the Allies should not have, or the Entente, sorry, not the Allies, the Entente should not have overthrown Blessed Karl. Because if Blessed Karl had not been overthrown, Hitler wouldn't have risen to power. That was Winston Churchill's view of history.
Wow.
Looking back.
Never thought about that. That's fascinating.
But Churchill was a liberal at this point, so he's very different in this context. So
well, and also it's just sort of a cultural thing to just like hate famous Englishmen, like that probably didn't think about you or care about you at all. Like,
yeah.
So you have to take some of it with like a grain of salt. And I don't know anything about Winston Churchill's views on Ireland or the Irish to tell you that he was a bad person or a great person or anything. I mean, I can tell you his figure in history. There is no underestimation, but
indeed,
I don't know that he was the butcher of Ireland, like some people might say he was. Maybe he was. Maybe he really was. Maybe people who know more about that can comment in the comment section. I'd be interested in learning more about that.
Also, if I was in this civil war, I would have taken rule by George the Fifth over the rule by the complete rule by the Irish I guess Congress,
the Provisional Republic.
Yeah. I like, because
so you'd have gone back to the monarchy, back to the Irish monarchy.
So when I'm saying so the Free State, I don't think was necessarily a bad idea. I'm just saying that if their goal was for independence, at least, or not independence, but a more independent government, if it was me, I would have been like, okay, I don't want Parliament because Parliament's the problem. Give me the king. I'll take the king because the king. I don't think the king would be as the king's not a tyrant, especially the monarchs at this point. They weren't looking for power. They were just trying to make everyone happy to some degree and stand for tradition. They had a level of tradition that the Irish Republic did not. And then you just have a sort of a government that maybe governs day-to-day stuff, but still has to get approval from the king.
Yeah,
that's what I would have set up if I was in the situation. That's what I would advocate for. Because just like the American Revolution, I would say that the Parliament was the problem, not the king.
I'm of the opinion that I will just leave it to the people of Ireland to decide for themselves what their form of government's going to be. But I will say this: in Northern Ireland, in particular, I understand the way that those people feel. And that was the other thing. My grandmother, she always, if my grandmother was talking about African Americans, they were African Americans. If they were talking about Hispanic Americans, they're Cuban American, Mexican American, they're whatever. But those people, you always knew who she was talking about. There were all those people, because if you've met the Protestant, you've met one, you've met them all. That was sort of her mentality. But I can say this: the mistreatment of our Catholic brothers and sisters in the North needs to stop. To a large extent, it has. But the singling us out and the treating of those people like second-class citizens and the marginalization of them from political and public life must end. So I'm not trying to cut the Protestants out. I'm not trying to say that they don't belong here and they shouldn't exist or any of that stuff. But they need to also realize that our people exist there and they have a right to that land too. And
here's what I'll say about I agree wholeheartedly about the treat. We need to mend relations the Irish need to be more mended regarding North and South. But I don't really have anything to say about that because I've never had any animosity towards the Northern Irish. So I'm bad to speak of that. But what I will say is every group, whenever they participate in self-determination, they always make the worst decisions. Like, tell me a people that have done a good job with self-determination on a consistent basis.
How are we measuring this?
Well,
are we measuring this by material success?
No, in accordance with the Catholic faith.
I don't think there's any nation, self-determinate or otherwise, that's doing a very good job of that. I don't know.
Exactly. That is why determining what type of government you have by virtue of voting or whatever does not work.
Well, I don't think that any form of government of any particular site is going to work, because at the end of the day, they're all going to have the same problem. They're all instituted by us. They're fallen human creatures who, at the end of the day, in spite of our best efforts, are just going to screw everything up. That's the amazing thing to me. Why I don't understand why people aren't just obsessed with Jesus of Nazareth is it's a universal truism that in spite of your best efforts, you're probably going to screw everything up, with one huge exception. One guy got everything right. He did everything right. And the world didn't get him. And he didn't screw everything up in spite of his best efforts. He accomplished the goal. He did it. I don't know why we're not all just obsessed with Jesus of Nazareth all the time. I don't know. Did I lose you, Connor?
This is what I'm saying.
Sorry.
No.
Okay, good.
But this is what I'm saying. People don't make good decisions. So you can't rely on people making decisions in their best interest, insofar as a democracy. At least there are forms of government outside of monarchy that accomplish what it means to be a good government. And it's not exclusive to monarchy.
You know why the monarchies all failed? Because the corruption and the indifference and all those other things that plague democratic organizations began to corrupt all the monarchy institutions too. And
I can't think of one that became specifically indifferent. I can think of some that
Russia's.
So the problem with, this is a whole different podcast, really. The whole problem with the monarchs at the time of World War I was that their bureaucrats ran their government. the politicians ran the government. The monarchs didn't.
That doesn't speak very highly of monarchy then, I guess, does it? I mean,
I think it doesn't speak well for politicians. I don't think the only people that tried to stop the war were the monarchs.
but see, this is the problem communism always makes. It's not my fault. It was all those darn capitalists. But you're supposed to be the cure, and capitalism is supposed to be the disease. It's a bit like saying when you hire a termite guy and he comes in and then your house is still infested and you go, well, what the hell? And your exterminator goes, well, it's not my fault. It was all those damn termites. You see what I'm saying? I mean, the monarchy didn't stop the political corruption.
Communism didn't work, has never worked. Monarchy worked for pretty much the entire time Christianity existed until World War I.
Well, I mean, I guess you could make arguments about worked, depending on
they
how
were successful, and they maintained, for the most part, the faith that was handed down to them. There were a few exceptions, but it tended to be that they the ones that failed fell into the same traps that we're talking about, but the ones that didn't fail.
I tend to think that people go with what works. People don't go with capitalism because capitalism is this amazingly moral system. I think they just go with it because it works better. And I think if monarchy was working so well, nobody would have ever given it up. But the fact of the matter is it's not like even there's no country on earth other than the Vatican and I think Swahili land that are absolute monarchies anymore. I mean, that's kind of telling about something. Well, I don't know if I could be wrong, but just one man's opinion.
Most monarchies were never absolute. I would dispute that characterization, but
that's probably true. I don't know a lot about it, but
the Prince of Liechtenstein is a very Catholic monarchy. It's very small, of course, but it's a very Catholic monarchy and active, and they have veto power and that sort of thing. So, and they beat back abortion in their country.
I can give you an example in which the monarchy was both indifferent and did not actively hand on the faith that it did not accurately hand on the faith that was handed on to it. I can give you a perfect example.
Is it Henry VIII?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
Vatican City.
Okay.
Boom. No, I'm just kidding, Connor. I'm gonna cede the point, and then we'll wrap up because I got to keep going.
Yeah. No. Okay. So, but the agony garden moment for Eamon de Valera, where he's deciding whether or not to basically betray his friend.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. You still
Mark? There? Yeah. So. Yeah. Did you hear what I said though?
Repeat it real quick.
The agony in the garden moment. Eamon de Valera and deciding basically whether or not to betray and have Michael Collins killed.
Right.
Now, it's unclear still to me in the movie whether he had him killed. Is it clear to you?
That's what it seemed like to me. It seemed like he had him assassinated. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's something he wanted to do, but felt like he had to. That was my takeaway. I don't know specifically what I can point to that gave me that impression, but that's how I remembered it.
Yeah, I think it's I think it's like you wouldn't be weeping if you weren't like making a decision you didn't want to make.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Michael Collins gets assassinated, and his fiance is picking out dresses and all that stuff, and it's a terrible sort of terribly sad ending. It's very much like a Greek tragedy.
Oh yeah, I mean it's an Irish movie for sure. If you ever want to read the quintessential Irish poet, check out W.B. Yeats's The Second Coming, and that'll give you all you need to know about our melancholy people. But yeah, no, it's definitely a sad ending to the film. But if you hail from Erin's sunny shores, you're used to that. So
great movie, great act, and I just think it does a good job of making you actually interested in the history.
Yeah, and a great discussion, by the way, Connor. Really thank you for having me on. I really enjoyed talking about this with you. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, Mark, I really appreciate you coming on and talking about this. Would you mind giving a pitch for Trad Men before we go?
I'd love to. So if you've never checked out Trad Men, we're kind of like the Kirkland's brand, Avoiding Babylon, right? So our show's kind of like that. It's not as slick and polished as Avoiding Babylon is, but we've just got that
Not
raw
everyone knows
sound.
who Avoiding Babylon is.
Anybody who's watching my show does.
Well, but no, not everyone who watches this show watches Avoiding Babylon.
We talk about all kinds of things that are going on in the Catholic Church, not just the traditional Latin Mass stuff, but we're primarily interested in the lay apostolate, what you guys are doing out there to further the new evangelization. And we'd really love it if you'd come and subscribe to our channel and join us in those discussions. And that's all.
I support that entirely. The Trad Men podcast is an awesome YouTube show as well as podcast, and it has too few subscribers for the quality of content.
Thank you, man. Plus, that's really nice.
They had Bishop Schneider. They had Bishop Athanasius Schneider on, so go check out that episode specifically. So I mean, that's just, talk about big names, dropping big names.
I tell you what, he was such a humble guy too. And he was, definitely one of my favorite episodes. And we also did a really good episode with Dr. Peter Kwasniewski on his book, True Obedience in the Church, which was really a great thing for me to read after Traditionis Custodes. And so, yeah, definitely check them out. Check out those episodes. And
awesome. Well, thank you everyone for watching. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Have a great Holy Week, and God bless.
God bless you guys.